Hello and welcome to another live demonstration. Today I want to talk to you about pen and wash or line and wash. We're not sure the correct term, but it's a really nice medium. I like working in it because I usually like to work really fast and really get things down, splash colour down and see what happens. But with pen and wash, you actually need to have some control with the pen, and that slows my mind down and allows me to think about what I'm doing. So I like to use different mediums when I'm in different moods, to be honest. So pen and wash, what's pen and wash? Traditionally, you will put pen down onto the page. Let's just do a quick tree. And these are just quick. So you'd put your pen down. Now, depending on what you're doing, if you're doing a sketch, you may put it down a little quicker than, or a little slower, just depending on the style. This is just a really quick sketch, just to show you the idea. You'll know what it's about. So, trees. You can see how you can use a kind of different techniques to create texture in your drawing. So put the pen down on the page. This is a nice waterproof pen once dry. So you do need to check that it is dry. Depending on the different surfaces, they take a little longer. And when I mean dry, I'm talking minutes. I'm not talking a long time. But you do need to check that the pen is dry before you put paint on. So this is a watercolour paper, so this will have dried quite quickly. And then what you do is you put a wash on, a wash of colour. So it could be ink, it could be pen. I'm going to be using watercolour. You can see, I might use a bit of red because the colours at the moment are really changing. The leaves are changing so much, and I'm not sure if I've seen so many colours as I have this year. So just putting some of the red colours that you're seeing on the leaves as we're going into autumn. So adding colour on top of the pen. So pen and wash, as the name suggests. I like it. It kind of looks very illustrative. So you like those illustrations you get in a book. That's just very loose. And you can see again, I've just put the colour on quite quickly. Or say you've done a watercolour and it just maybe not quite worked, or it needs that little bit extra or bit of detail. You can put pen on top of. So here I've just done a little sky, and I'll put a boat in. You should always know what you're drawing and have a plan. Then put some cliffs in the background and some trees in the horizon. So you can see how there's the two ways of doing a pen and wash. So pen first, wash on top. And then, or a wash or a watercolour that just maybe needs something extra to add to it. Another way is to get a water-soluble pen. So the pen I was using was a permanent pen, one that dries waterproof. Or you can use something like a Stabilo, which is a water-soluble pen. So again, you can do the sketching on the paper. And paper dependent, it depends on the paper you're using. You can actually use the ink you've put down to move and create more tones. Another great one is the quick ink. Put in your fountain pen and you can do the same thing with that. And some ink split into different colours. But it's all pen and wash. You're using a pen and you're adding water or colour to make a wash. So just a few little ways. I'm sure you can think of many more. What I'm going to do, Gary's take this down for me, is I'm going to do a little study of some conkers or horse chestnuts because they're prolific at the moment. And it was really nice to see a father, and he had a carrier bag, and his little daughter was running around collecting all the conkers. I think that's just really nice thing to see. And like I say, the colours are amazing. And the horse chestnut leaves kind of curl round on themselves and go very brown round the edges. So all the colours are coming out at the moment. The russets and browns and greens and everything, pinks even. Some of the leaves are really going pink. So it's a really nice time to get out there, take photographs, you know, of all the different leaves. Because I was looking for conkers, I was really looking at all the different trees, and I was amazed by the variety of trees and all their different colours as they're coming into autumn. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use the pen. I'm doing it pen and then adding colour. I'm just choosing a pen, 2 pens. One is very fine, and I will put this on initially, and then the other one is a thicker. And what I find is by varying your line, you can add more texture to your work. So I'm just going to copy out, draw the leaves, and this is where the work's going to be. The wash at the end, you'll see, goes on really quickly, but is very effective. So like I say, for me, I don't usually spend the time slowly drawing. I like to work a lot quicker because most of my demonstrations have to be done in 40 minutes or half an hour. So I don't always have the luxury or time to think of something that will take a little longer. So that's why I've only done a small study. It's the first leaf, the leaf goes behind. So at the moment I'm just creating the line. I'm going to put tonal values on later. And I will be constantly looking and thinking about how the darks should be in the lights. So here the leaf rolls over on itself. And I'm doing it quite sketchily. Sometimes I'm going to have some really smooth lines, but other times dots and dashes. So the conkers are going to be very smooth because they're a really smooth object and a solid object. With leaves, I can use the pen to denote that they're a little bit crinkled, they're a little bit drier. And the conkers I had for this image on the photograph didn't have their spikes on them, so they'd gotten a lot older and the conkers were a bit bigger. So I'm going to put some spikes on just because I think, you know, it adds that little bit more definition. So that's where I'm altering the photograph. It's not exactly what I've seen, but nobody's seen your photograph. So they don't know exactly if it had spikes on or prickles, I'm not sure what they're called, but you know what they mean. That white soft inner bit goes up on this conker. It's literally holding it still in. And the conker, I'm going to dot and dash on the white bit at the top where it was held into the shell, and then really try and keep a lovely smooth finish for the outer. That's got to bring back the shell, and you can see there as I'm doing it, I'm really thinking about the difference in textures. Even with pen, you can really help to define different textures. That conker's still attached inside. So I am using the photograph as reference, even though I've got lines down. I think it's important because as you're drawing, this is where you're actually thinking about what you're drawing and what you're seeing. You're not going to do a true representative. I'm going to miss bits out of a photograph and add bits in. And I'm just seeing as I'm drawing what it needs. Does it need a little bit extra in that corner? is it a bit too bare? So I'm trying to think about where this leaf goes. It rolls over here, behind this leaf, which has got a little crease in it, which means I'm going to have some veins over here. So the photograph is much clearer in the foreground and much more blurred in the background, so I'm trying to have to interpret what I'm seeing, because it's not so easy to keep a blurred line when I'm doing this pen and wash. Need to add lines. Okay, so let me just add that leaf. So this is another little conker or horse chestnut, and I was looking at facts about the horse chestnut. They're not actually an indigenous species to the UK. They were brought over as an ornamental species in about the 16th century. So, but it's now made an impact, especially with generations of school kids, when they've been tying their conkers to strings and having conker fights. I was discussing it with Gary, and apparently you're not supposed to soak them in vinegar or bake them. That's against the rules. That's cheating, apparently.
No nail varnish either.
I didn't know about nail varnish. You've obviously thought about it extensively. But just the good old-fashioned... I remember doing it as a kid, to be honest. You know, it was really important, the going out and looking for the conkers, finding the biggest. And then you've got the other... We'll talk about the putting conkers in your house to ward away spiders. Well, I don't think it works, because of the big spider sitting on my bowl of conkers hasn't been told that it's supposed to keep it away. So it may work. I'm not saying it doesn't work, but it's not working for me. And to be honest, I still get a little excited. I was going around and we were stopping at cars because I needed to get pictures of conkers, and I was saying to my partner, that's a conker tree, we need to stop. He goes, oh, do we have to? And even when I was taking photographs, he said, oh, look at this one, look at this one. So it was really nice to actually, and they're beautiful. They're a beautiful colour. It's much raw sienna, and it's got the veins on and the shine. I think they're just the nut is a really lovely thing on its own. So I've drawn out the outline, and now I'm going to think about my darks, and I'm going to use a technique called cross-hatching. Now I could just use a bigger pen and fill it in, but I quite like the cross-hatching because it looks, like I've said before, very much like a traditional illustration. So this leaf comes over here. I'm going to change pens because this was good enough for the very fine lines. Now I'm going to go into a thicker pen, which will help fill in some of the darker areas, but I can now change the width of some of the lines just to add a little bit more character. So this is the really smooth, soft outer casing of the nut. And I was looking at why they're called horse chestnuts. There are different factoids about it. One was that when the leaves break away, they leave a little horseshoe impression, which I did try and have a look, but I couldn't find one. They are poisonous to most animals, but there are some animals which can eat them. If you pulp them up, they can be used for sprains and bruises, but on the whole they're just great fun for kids and adults. Like I say, I had a lot of fun searching for conker trees.
And roasting them at Christmas, do you know that?
No, that's sweet chestnuts, not horse chestnuts. Not horse, they're poisonous.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh, you've been eating the wrong ones. Yeah, there's the sweet chestnuts, which you can eat. Horse chestnuts are, there's a few animals which can eat them, but on the whole, not advised to. But they are used in medicine sometimes. And so you can see here, what I'm doing is I'm using cross-hatching technique, also thinking about the darker areas, how to create tone. I'm not going to be using colour this time to totally create tone. It's going to be all pen work. So it's going to be darker under the shell where it's resting on the leaf, and then across hatch to just make it a little darker. What I'm going to do is change the shape because it just looks like a bit of a even line at the moment. And then inside the leaves are going to have some texture. A little bit towards the stalk is going to be a little darker. I'm just lost a little bit which leaf is which, so I'll come back to it. I'm just adding the tone. All of it's done with the pen, and I could be neater, but I quite like a sketch. Now I'm going to think about how I can bring back some of these darker lines. Now I've got the bigger pen. This, I want to make it a little bit more solid. So bring back some of the spikes, but keep also some of those much finer lines. So darker. Right, I'm just going to darken here because this is behind. I can come back because there's some areas I don't like. They're not working quite at the moment. And you can see how quickly you can actually work with the cross hatching. Like I say, this is just one technique. I could make that a solid, but I like this sketchy feel. Go back over very lightly and alter. So this is darker underneath. What I will do is show you when I put some shading on the nut or the conker, how if you follow the line you will get a much more realistic shape. So I'm just filling in the dark areas here because then I can think about working on maybe a little bit of tone on the lighter areas. Dark here behind, again cross hatching, and you can do it quite quickly. You get a feel for it. You don't have to do it as quickly as I am, but like I say, you don't want to just sit and watch me doing line after line really slowly. So I'm trying to pick up the speed for you. So it may not be as finished as I would normally do if I was doing it for myself, but that doesn't matter. Just add some texture. So this leaf is behind that one, so I'm going to add a little bit of definition just to show that it is behind. So this one is behind these here, so it needs a little shading, and this is going to be background, dark background. Normally I would turn my page, but as it's taped down, I'm going to have to work over. And if I'd thought about it, I could have worked that way down, but I tend to work kind of, I don't know, where I feel I need to. And that doesn't always help when Gary's trying to decide where I'm going to go next. Sorry, Gary, because I don't always know. Okay.
That's why I've taped it down.
Yeah, that's why it's taped it down, so I don't fling it around, and he has to really try and keep up. So dark areas behind. So let me just add texture to whatever shape that is. I think it's a leaf, but it has to be darker because it is behind. Go on. So this hasn't got enough shading. Like I say, I would probably do a lot more work and really think about the detail, but I quite like a sketch finish. So now just thinking about, this has got some darkness and patterns and just shape. Okay, right, this in a bit. I'm going to very, very lightly try and get a round shape, just to indicate that it is an inner area. And I'm just scraping the pen across the page so you can see how fine you can actually get. Now, onto the Conker. I just want to show that it is a solid shape and it's not just relying on the colour. So it's going to be dark under here. But I want to retain white areas for shine, which is I was finding was quite difficult. So darker areas are going to be on this side, and you'll see I'm trying to bring a curved shape into the shadow, just because it's going to then make that a round shape. Again, cross hatching. So a little bit on this side. It's not easy. It's something you need to practice doing this shape, because you can do straight lines, but actually trying to shape around a round object is actually quite difficult. Try it on a simple shape like an apple and just work out how it works, because normally I would move it, and it is quite difficult not to be able to move, because I can move my hand and make it much easier for myself. But this is what I have to put up with.
Made it difficult.
This is what I have to put up with.
I can hear you.
No, so right, okay. Don't want to overwork, but I do want to indicate darks and lights. So again, I can't always see without stepping back the tonal values, but I can fix that much easier with colour if I've missed anything. So you can see I've put quite a lot of detail on there. I need to let it dry, but because I know I've done it on a watercolour paper, I'm hoping it will dry quite quickly. And drying, I'm talking minutes, if that. So normally I would just make sure I would do all the preparation while it's drying.
Shall we have a quick break then, Anita?
That's a good idea, Gary. I tell you what, while it is drying, let's have a short break for an ad break, and we'll come back, and then I know it will be dry then. So join me in a moment.
Let us bring out the artist in you. If you'd like to learn how to paint or improve your painting, the SAA is here to inform, encourage, and inspire you every step of the way. When you become an SAA member, you get so many benefits, including the free bi-monthly newsletter Paint, packed with inspiring step-by-step projects, fascinating articles, and detailed information to get your creative juices flowing. Discounts on over 13,000 art products featured on the SAA website and in the Home Shop catalogue, with free order line and free delivery in the UK mainland. A devoted SAA team on hand to answer your questions and give you the confidence and motivation you need to start painting and develop at a pace that suits you. plus a free welcome pack filled with gifts and practical help to get you started, as well as the opportunity to make friends with like-minded people.
Best thing to be a member is the inspiration from the magazines, to be able to purchase things at a very reasonable price.
Yeah, you get the reduction on all the materials, the advice you get.
I can shop from home.
It's a community.
It seemed like a very friendly sort of organisation.
If somebody's thinking of joining, don't spend too long thinking. Just join. They'll love it.
And we're back.
Hello and welcome back. So Gary pointed out that it was a good place to have a break, which it actually was. So now I know this is going to be dry. What I was doing was struggling to get that really rich brownness of the nut. So I tried lots of combinations. It's not just the colour, it's the shine as well. So this is something I could practice by doing lots and lots and lots until you get it right. So I'm just going to put a base layer of, I think this is lemon yellow, just because it will give me a lovely warm, no, not a warm, a lovely yellow base, which actually, when I'm looking for that rich orange, will work well with the red. So just put in a wash. This is what pen and wash is, wash of colour. I'm not, again, you'll see I'm not colouring or putting the colour on every part. I'm just dropping it on because there's more colour than the yellow. Well, it's actually going to turn out green when I have finished, but it's given me a base layer, a base colour, and it's stopping me having that horrible blank, colourless. Where do I start from? Now it's got colour on, you're now on your way to start putting colour on. So I'm going to go for burnt sienna because it is a beautiful colour that will just work on its own. So now, it's quite wet, I'm going to just drop it on. Like I say, some of these leaves have turned and they have brown around the edge. I think that's quite strong. Again, drop it on. Just drop that round. I'm not filling up all the gaps. I'm going to leave white areas. You can see here, and that's very much browner. So just letting it drop where it feels like. And here I can see it's just starting to, because the leaves have curled round, this is more the back. It's just starting to have a hint of the brown, and then there's a little bit underneath. Bring it into the casings. Okay. I might even, looking at it, very, very wet, bring it onto the inside, just so it's not stark and white. Oh, right. So now I'm just going to use some of the red. This is cadmium red, and I know it's very opaque, so I'm going to really water it down. I just want a much more orange feel on some areas of this conker. See, I'm purposely leaving the white areas. And it's very wet at the moment. For me, this is not strong enough, but I want it as a base colour. Being very careful because I know it's quite an opaque colour, which means it will cover the yellow. I do find with a pen and wash is when you've done all the work, you don't need to always worry about the colours you're putting on. You can be actually really loose about them. Just drop some red. Okay. Right. Going to go a bit stronger now. Bring some green in. So I'm using cobalt blue and this lemon yellow, which is not too bright a green. So greens, because the leaves have still got some green on them. And again, use the colours that are underneath. Like I say, if I was doing this, I possibly might be a little bit more careful and a little bit more judging where I'm putting colour, but sometimes it's nice to work quite loosely and not overly worry. So I'm just looking at these dark areas, they do need some colour. A bit of blue, bit of brown, just as long as I show that they are the darker areas, which is already done with a pen, to be honest. Okay, and wash over. So just starting to add some of those lovely autumn colours. The work has been done already with the line. So putting colour on can be really loose. Bit of colour here, just so I don't have so much white just sitting there. So now I'm just starting to think these areas are going to be in the foreground. Need a little bit stronger. Okay, bring some green into the, so it's not got all as much white as it has. And then again stronger. Just make sure we show that that there are brown patches and that it still has some spikes. So now I've got the burnt sienna, I am going to use it to put on the nut, but again very wet because I don't want to lose some of those base colours I put on purpose in order so that they shine through and they glow through. I found burnt sienna on its own seemed a bit dull. Seems the perfect colour, but I thought it was a little dull. Again, take some into very white areas because not everything will be as white as you're seeing it. Might leave that and come back to it if I need to. Just bring some colour into this one just to show that it's a nut and it's not got overly lost behind. So I'm going to go stronger. While the paper's still wet, just going stronger. Okay. Right, just going to finish because I will keep fiddling and I will lose some of the looseness I've already got. I just want to add a little bit of shadow, so a bit of the blue and a bit of, no. One of the great shadow colours is to use the burnt sienna and the blue. You'll get some really lovely greys with this. I think that's going to be a perfect grey to use. Right. And the greys are going to just, very wet, just to give that inner areas, lose some of the really stark whites. Even though it is white, it's going to look odd. I'm going to drop. No, that looks odd, but I needed more colour. Bit of shadow under here, bit on there. It's too white otherwise. Step back. Maybe a little bit. I think that looks okay. So you can see how I really didn't overly think about where I was putting the colour. Hopefully I've been able to retain some of the light, and The reason I did this shape is because if I carefully remove the tape, and carefully you'll see why, because it's grabbing. This isn't technically a masking tape, it is a framing tape. On the whole, I use it very successfully, but I need to be aware that there may be times it will take paper away because it isn't technically a masking tape. And it's paper dependent, depending on the type of paper. So if I very carefully and slowly take it at an angle, I should be able to take it off the page.
A quick question for you, Anita.
Yes.
Fizzy Star Rat, who's watching, is taking part in Inktober.
Yes.
October, and she would like a nice new sketchbook, a nice size that she can easily carry around with her. What would you suggest for pen and ink?
For pen and ink, right. At the SAA we have loads of great sketchbooks, but we also have quite a unique sketchbook, which is the lay flat pad. And this, you can take an A5 page with you, and when you open it up, it gives you an A4 surface because it has a unique design, which normally down the middle of a sketch pad, it is stapled or stitched, and it goes in like that. So you can't get a nice ability to go across the page. With the lay flat pad, you have a nice A5 size, which is my favourite. You open it out and you've got an A4 surface because the unique design means that though there is a little ridge in the middle, it's not very prominent, so you can paint across the whole of the page and then fold it back and you're carrying the A5 size. You could also do A4, and again, you're then painting on an A3 size. So that's a really nice size. And a good quality cartridge, not too thin, because then you have the opportunity to add a little bit of a wash to it. This is a watercolor paper because I like the texture on it. But, you know, a good sketch pad makes the work a lot easier. So, you know, think about a slightly heavier weight sketch pad rather than a very thin 80 gram. I think you need a little bit more because it allows the pen to work and not worry about it sinking through or making the page cockle or things like that. So yeah, the lay flat pad is my advice, but have a look through, have one with a spiral that you can flip on yourself. That's a good way. One with a solid cover, you've got kind of then carrying a drawing board all in one, and you can flip back on it. So thank you for that question. I think that's worked quite well. So join us later in the week for a live workshop with Fraser Scarf.